podcast excellence since 2005. This is the King of Podcasts radio network, kingofpodcasts.com.
Congratulations, Netflix. Your NFL broadcasts on Christmas Day didn't buffer.
The King of Podcasts radio network proudly presents the Broadcasters Podcast. Here is the King of Podcasts.
And welcome to the program. This is the Broadcasters Podcast. This is going to be one of us closing out has it really been 5 seasons now? Oh, excuse me, 6 seasons of the program. 6 years I've done this program right here. And who would have thought I've gotten this far? But hey, I've enjoyed this program. It might not be the most popular show I have on my whole catalog of programs here on the network. I mean, I did add Podcasters earlier this year, and I have the Praise and Debauchery series. I have my Wrestling Conservative podcast, which, you know, they kind of surpass in certain ways and all, but I do appreciate that. And I do appreciate the folks that Lupe has brought me over, you know, from all the bumps that he's done for my Broadcasters Podcast all the time, and all the appearances I've gotten to go and do on his various radio appearances around the country, which I really appreciate that as well. So now we look at media overall in 2024. There's a lot of stories that are comprehensive, look backs. And when we look at where the digital disruption has done the most work, when it comes to television, network, cable, and streaming, and radio in general as well, the one thing that we do know is that YouTube has brought up some information, which we talked about last week about what they're doing with podcasts and why they're going so far more into investing into podcasts and what they're going to be doing to create a separate channel for monetization, which I'm looking forward to. What they're doing more to move things in a direction to get podcasts much more of a presence on YouTube. And why are they doing that? Well, NBC News has talked about it, and flat out this is it. That YouTube has become a leading destination for podcast consumers. In 2024, viewers watched more than 400 million hours of podcasts per month. One more time. Let me repeat that. Viewers of YouTube have watched more than 400 million hours of podcasts per month on their TVs in 2024. So for all of us that are able to go ahead and, you know, cast the phone or tablet or whatever we have, or right from our smart app on our television, people are going and streaming on YouTube and watching podcasts. Now, and I wasn't kind of surprised to see that video podcasts are starting to pick up much more, but the production value, especially when we got to the pandemic, when people were in lockdown, people really took time. And honestly, I think TikTok and Instagram and other places, social media have definitely contributed to the fact that investing in better equipment has made it overall important for all of us as content creators to make better quality programming. And one of the things we all learned was nobody right now on most of these video podcasts, they're not, they're doing a podcast because you're using a microphone, a setup audio microphone. They're not normally using a lavalier microphone, and they're normally not using boom microphones or things like that. They are with stationary microphones with the microphone in their face and people talking into them. All these shows are doing that. Now, one of the things we got to look at as well is that they're also all taking away from what is interesting in this whole particular story about how late night programming or primetime programming used to be. When you think of all the shows that we had before, okay, most of your talk shows that are your traditional, the way you see the setups are, they're either the way Howard Stern has said it. Dick Cavett is another great example because you always saw him like the chairs, and then you see the microphones, you know, directed at them. Or you would see Charlie Rose and the round tables, but they didn't have a microphone for them, but that round table discussion with the dark screen, like you'd have that in front of you. There are so many places where There's not much to see except the people that are talking, but the setups are pleasant. And you can watch them. The camera views are very well done, and it's presented well. And some of the people that are doing these shows, they are cutting away, and they're taking the shows and putting them together. Now, Kurt Wilms is a senior director of product management at YouTube. In a blog post he wrote this month, he said that, quote, they've been tuning into the podcast, quote, similar to how one would tune into a late night talk show, end quote. YouTube accounted for 10.4% of all TV viewing in July 2024, according to data from Nielsen, ahead of competitors including Walt Disney Company and NBC Universal. So 10.4% of all televisions watching YouTube. Spotify's event in November, they mentioned that the streaming platform has streamed more than 250 million viewers, have watched the video podcast. 250 million of its users. Nearly 2/3 of users preferring their podcasts with video. That's really amazing how much the people want to go ahead and watch. Now, one of the things is that it's got to be the people that are going to be watching. I think that's one thing we also got to look at as well. And the truth is, what I'm really surprised by as well is that there's so many stories I see out there, and it's not hard it's now commonplace. If you want to find somebody promoting something or appearing on something that's newsworthy, they're going on podcasts. Let me tell you like this. Timothée Chalamet, right? He's got the movie Complete Unknown coming out, the Bob Dylan movie. As I'm recording this tonight right now, it's December 26th. It just turned midnight, just so you know the context. And Timothée Chalamet has been out doing other rounds. He's been doing press junkets and things like that. But I've seen him on regular shows. I saw him on Theo Von. So laid back and grounded and like, wow. He also went on ESPN's College Game Day. And among other things, so like he's out there getting promoted. And it's like we're seeing this different side of Timothée Chalamet, which for a celebrity is wonderful. It's something I really think that for celebrities that are out there, they're realizing, yeah, we're going to get to know more of who they are by doing these shows. No, Timothée Chalamet is not going on Stephen Colbert or Jimmy Kimmel. He's going on Theo Von. Who knows if Joe Rogan picks him up? But like, we're seeing this here. And, you know, obviously the hosts of these podcasts, they got to feel like, okay, are we going to have anything to like work with? I'm not here to go and promote your movie like I'm Johnny Carson here. I'm not happening that, right? But something about this is working. They might have talked about the movie somewhat, but of the clips that I saw, Timothée Chalamet is talking about other stuff. Growing up in New York City and all this and that, like it was very cool. And I almost would go and look for the podcast. But like I'm just saying, I saw clips. I'm like, Matt, laid back. First, I want to watch the movie. I got to see the movie first. I already booked my tickets for that. It's been such a long year of podcasting and how much of a change we've had. We've done several episodes to talk about this year so far because there has been so much that has happened. It's been incredible. Now, you know, for me, I have been going back a little bit and going back to some of the podcast episodes I've been talking about, right? And some of the things that have been going on. I can't help myself because it's been fun to do that and just kind of reflect back. Podcasters, live streamers, social media stars, and outlier media figures. Alternative media, let's just call it that. That is the new media today. That is the media we're talking about right now, of the media for news, for entertainment, in some cases, that are surpassing anything you're watching on network TV or cable TV. I mean, if you're looking for entertainment and you're not looking for on these other channels where, for the most part, these podcasts are usually available for free with ad support. Then you go into streaming, which people might have some ad support on those for their subscriptions, but for the most part, they're not. The thing is, there's an interest in these audiences here because all these shows have advertisers. Now, they're monetizing probably by subscriptions for the fact that they have anybody that's in a super chat or whatever it is for YouTube show or for TikTok or for X, just on the amount of, you know, listeners or viewers are having getting on. There's a monetization for that. YouTube in the same way for the audience. And then you have the ads embedded, whether it's programmatic ads or they're the ads that are affiliate linked with promo codes that are provided by certain sponsors that basically go to all podcasts. That's the other thing that's going to make a mention of too. That we know that on these podcasts, the people who are watching, they are getting inundated with ads. No doubt about it. I don't think all these people have YouTube Premium where they're getting the ads bypassed. They're just having to skip the ads. So they're getting advertising. And these podcasters are getting content out there and people are listening to them. Something about that says everything that YouTube needs to do, which is the reason why they're going to focus so much on podcasting and why these numbers from YouTube and Spotify are so important. For Spotify, if they don't have a premium account, think of the advertising they're going to put in front of these podcasts right now. And all these podcasts that are long form, there's advertising within them, and they are doing pretty well off of that. That's something you got to go ahead and look into and say, man, there is something there about that. It's very important. I only said that 6 weeks ago. 6 weeks ago I said that. And now the stats are proving my point. Now, originally it was being said that 2023 was a tough year for podcasts as a whole, but popular podcasts would retain, and some instances grew, and their audiences grew in 2024. CAA, Creative Artists Agency's podcast department's head, Josh Lindgren, he says that there's been a huge shift in the industry in favor of talk show style, interview-oriented podcasts, which is why Alex Cooper's Call Her Daddy, Joe Rogan's The Joe Rogan Experience, have been so popular. Quote, we've seen a real growth in public figures who have a message to get out, seeing the value in podcasting as a way to give a nuanced and long-form answer and a different type of glimpse into what they're thinking or what they're doing. And that's the same if you're an actor who's promoting a new movie or a politician who wants to talk about policy. Travis Dunlap, who is with William Morris Endeavor, another big Hollywood talent agency, he's worked in the podcasting space for over nearly a decade, says, and so it's become the most modern version of a talk show. Gone are the days where people look at YouTube as an offshoot alternative to TV. It is TV today. Yeah. Edison Research, in their survey-based podcast listening data, the share of ear, they say that 81% of weekly podcast listeners above age 13 listen to or watch podcasts with a video component. 81% of them now watching with a video component. Listen or watch. That's crazy. Look at the young audience you're catching now from it. NBC News talked with Tom Webster, a partner at Podcast Radio Association Sounds Profitable, saying that video podcasts are giving audiences a more interactive experience than many of the TV talk shows that once commanded living rooms, especially with the decline of traditional live and studio audiences. Yeah. And that's the part that I will say this. We're about to be 5 years removed from COVID. Not talking about what happened in terms of the medical side of it and how people were affected by it. It was the way that broadcasting handled it. Now, my father, once in a while, he's watching TV, and he still catches Ion TV, right? The local channel that shows all these, mostly CBS shows. And he'll catch episodes of Bull. Michael Weatherly, from formerly of NCIS, it was his own show he had on for a while. And I remember seeing some of the episodes where everybody was in masks and everybody was socially distancing. And I'm telling you, if you notice right now, people can't watch shows that came from that time. Nobody really necessarily wants to see episodes with all that going on. And so for the broadcasting industry, was it worth it to go ahead and continue to try to work in the conditions that COVID were in place? They had no choice, obviously, but the thing is that because of what happened, when celebrities were now talking to each other in living rooms and not meeting in studio, and the studio audiences were taken away, and we were having in all these Zoom calls, and people coming in like that, and having the kind of pipe in audience. Like, we know studio audiences came back. It took about 2 years for that to completely come back. But since then, it's never come back completely. Like, I mean, I was just watching, Price is Right. They had a nighttime edition on Christmas Eve. And I'm like, the audience they have right now in the Bob Barker studio is so much smaller than it was. Like they must have had maybe like a little over 100 people in there as contestants. When I was watching back in the day, it used to look like it was about 800 to 1,000 people in that studio watching along and really excited, enthusiastic to be on that show or a chance to be called into contestants row. But we've also noticed that, because of content and where network TV is and what other channels are out there, that the level of late night talk and what people are talking about, the celebrities, we've seen that also go downhill as well. I mean, the level of celebrity that we have, we don't have the superstars anymore. There's a story I'm going to talk about that real quick that makes a point about that this year as well. Because the thing is that celebrities now and the fakeness that we have and the thoughts of, do we care about seeing them out in the paparazzi and all on TMZ's reporting on them? No, not really anymore. That's kind of gone. Like what's happening now more than anything is that famous people can be anybody. And that the audience out there, consuming media in general, they don't necessarily care about the audience that's being pushed down our throats by Hollywood or by television itself. I was listening to my niece and my and a friend. Well, like there was a family friend that I know that, and he's about the same age, early 20s, right, Gen Z. And I'm listening to them, and they're talking about content creators. They're talking about people that are streaming on Twitch and Kick, because that's what they're watching. And I know there are others that are probably watching other programming that's not your normal gamut. Like, it might be cartoons, might be anime, it might be playing video games, might be doing something else. Or just going through social media and just watching clip after clip after clip on TikTok. But the traditional sense of what we were watching, and me being Gen X, and seeing the generational change, it's incredible because really the change of the digital disruption has really happened in the last 5 years I've been here doing this. COVID forced a seismic shift, and the seismic shift has continued to go along now. And I think about the fact that so many mistakes were made during COVID. They couldn't do a pause, I guess. I mean, certain shows they could have kept a pause on. When I think about all the daytime programming, I mean, you could have probably still kept running episodes on there, and, I don't think it would have made much of a difference. But when I saw shows coming back, and they tried to bring it back, okay, like wrestling, okay, I was watching professional wrestling, obviously I still do, but trying to watch it in the sense that they had it before, where it was everybody was just like watching from Zoom calls, and only the wrestlers were in the ring with the referee, and that was it. And trying to watch the Thunderdome, they would call it. And it's just, I can't go back to that again. And I noticed they don't put a lot of clips back from that either. So that kind of hurt things. And just a lot of shows that we watched and a lot of different events we watched where there was a lack of a crowd. It was very hard to consume. All that was. And I think that's one of the things that really did hurt overall. Trying to watch anything on television. It sucked. But everybody being able to be consumed in their homes or wherever they were to their podcasts, those survived and thrived because it was new organic content all the time. And the thing is, there is a way to go and do various programs. You don't necessarily have to go and do guest-driven. You can do monologues, but there's a lot of guest-driven content out there. And to have the real relaxed conversations. I think the other thing too was that we had those relaxed conversations with other people. And we don't have those anymore. When I think about it, Tom Snyder was a great example of a late night host that really just gave you casual, laid back, and they would just talk. Charles Grodin to a point was giving us that. Larry King gave us that. I mean, we had those shows. And for some people, they want to listen to that long format and just hear everything that's out there because the technology has gotten so good for us that everybody has a good enough internet connection to stream on any device all of this. So first go and watch on YouTube or, watch it on another channel. I just think that more people are realizing that podcasting and the way it is, it just works. And that people will listen to a very casual, kind of dressed down conversation. They're not playing to the camera. The camera's just eavesdropping on them. Like, you do understand that part. Well, that's why Joe Rogan does so well and all these other interviews. In the time that they have, the casualness of the conversation really allows a guest, without having to go and do that 7 to 15 minute shot that they have, which is on a late night show or a talk show or like a news talk or whatever it is. Well, they're not being set to a time limit like that. There's a reason you go that long, is because you really can drag out a lot more from the guest. You get them in their comfort zone. You get them to open up more than you expect. Now, does it always mean that every minute of that podcast is going to be great? No, not necessarily. You get a lot of clips from it, and some people will listen all the way through. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've gone to a podcast and I can't listen to the whole thing through. It's hard. It's not easy to do that. But people will just want to listen to people. And that was something that's really important. Now, here's one thing I thought was a story that was very telling of what's going on. Observer.com brings up a story which is very telling. Why Hollywood no longer produces superstars. I think they make a good point here. They talk about the collapse of the studio system, a fragmented entertainment media ecosystem, and the rise of the franchise culture. So now, in the story, they say that while talent and the elusive it factor are always at play, the rigid studio system that reigned Hollywood from the 20s to the 50s played such a role in creating stars. After the studio system collapsed in the 1960s, major companies still held significant power over talent, but the power waned, and so did the emphasis on formal training for actors. They talked to an author, Linda Ann Watt. She wrote the Actors Manifesto and she's founder of the Academy of Acting, said that, quote, back in the day, studios had their actors take diction, acting, dance, and singing lessons. Now the actor has to navigate these areas themselves to be a well-rounded success. But we know that also, because of how things are today, there are a lot of people that are online that they're multi-talented. And they can do a lot of things at one time. But also, anybody that gets to be on television now, you have to be multi-talented. You got to be able to go and do it. It's hard. Quote, unlike the traditional stars of the 20th century, there are far more intricate elements at play now. According to Dylan Davey, founder of the Social Inc., a talent management and branding company, quote, back then a studio could promote an actor heavily and establish their name as a box office draw because the entertainment options were more limited. Audiences, especially younger ones who set the trends, are no longer bound to what a studio or network puts in front of them. YouTube, TikTok, and the tidal wave of streaming has fragmented the entertainment media ecosystem into an endless sea of niches versus the once dominant shared monoculture. But see, before I continue with the story, one of the things was that we used to have a crossover culture. The one thing was that mainstream media, they would pick up on various trends that were out there, whether it was online or whether it was, in other counterculture realms. And they would pick up on it and they would bring it into their fold. But they don't do it anymore. The crossover is something that doesn't get talked about much. I talk about with music. I'll talk about with radio. We used to have a crossover culture that used to go ahead and allow us to learn about all these different genres of music and bring us into new audiences and new groups. And we would get a taste of something becoming a hit. And then we would go get drawn to that artist. Same thing when it came to movies and television. There were certain counterculture things that might become mainstream, but at least it tapped us into something else we would go and watch more of. It's about how it also rerouted the power of consumption from the preset schedules and parameters of film studios and TV networks to the consumer, who now has complete control of what, when, and how they watch their favorite entertainment. Yeah, technology changed it. DVRs, We're not set to a schedule anymore. No more appointment viewing. And because of the fact we're not watching shows with time, with time slots or with what they are. I mean, look at streaming. The shows we see now, they're not set to a particular time. They might be set to a particular time amount because of the fact they might get rebroadcast somewhere else. But for the most part, I'm looking right now at Landsman. Just watched Landman, and that was the first show I just saw on Paramount Plus. And I was like, 50 minutes? But I know the other episodes will be a little bit shorter. Tulsa King I saw, Mayor Kingstown, they're all on Paramount Plus, but they're all in kind of different formats. 30 to 40 minutes, sometimes maybe 50, depending on the particular story. Because they also know that in these particular episodes of stories that they do for these shows, they don't necessarily have to stop at that point. They can just stop at a certain point and say, okay, we're going to stop here in the story and then continue on the next episode without having to go and constrain to a particular time. As such, building and maintaining the presence of big-name actors has become more challenging. Unless we all want to relinquish all connections to the internet, this won't change. And then what would happen is, because of the fact that we couldn't get star-driven network television, cable, movies as the way it was before, well, that's why Hollywood chose to go with franchises and just do that. Don't worry about the star power. Worry about the content. If we can go ahead and repurpose it, if we can rehash it, we can recycle it, we continue to sequel it over and over. Scott Mendelson over at Puck News and founder of the Outside Scoop, he says that the rise of franchise culture was inevitable. Quote, the generation that created one-and-done hits in the 80s and 90s are never retired are still the Hollywood tastemakers of the moment. It's not coincidence that the stars of the 2010s broke out by playing new versions of Captain Kirk or Spider-Man. They never got a chance to establish themselves as themselves. Now, there have been stars that have been able to go and avoid franchise fare. They quote, they cite Sandra Bullock, Denzel Washington, and Leonardo DiCaprio. And they've been allowed to be able to maintain the drawing power for non-IP films. But actors like Robert Downey Jr. and Johnny Depp, once considered chameleonic talents, became so associated with defining roles as Iron Man and Jack Sparrow, it can be difficult for audiences to separate them from their franchise characters. And profitability was much more reachable when budgets rarely topped $100 million. But today, blockbuster budgets have ballooned, theatrical windows are shorter than ever, and the market is oversaturated with big-scale, fantastical storytelling that was once uncommon at multiplexes. Let me tell you this, too. When there was a change in the structure post-COVID of movies and how they were being exhibited in theaters, a lot of mistakes were made right there, right? Think about it. When they shortened the window and say like Warner Brothers, they decided to go ahead and put out in theaters and on streaming same day. Major mistake. And of course they retracted that. And the fact that you can have movies right now 30 days later and they're streaming, or 45 days later and they're already streaming. And if you just have an existing subscription and you're not paying for the rental, you can already watch it. Takes away the whole movie experience. Now, there are some really good movies coming out this weekend as I'm recording this. I'm going to catch a couple of them. I'm going to go out and catch Baby Girl with Nicole Kidman and Nicholas Hoult. I think, is it Nicholas Hoult? I don't know. Somebody else. I forget who it is now. It was some other kid. I forgot his name. Sorry. Nicholas Hoult is the Superman and stuff. I saw that trailer. That looked great. And I'm going to watch Complete Unknown. And for those, sure, you want to go and wait until it comes out in streaming, go right ahead. But like for me, I want to go watch it in the theater. I want to enjoy it there because I really do enjoy my experience there. So they talk about the fact of back in 2008, Indiana Jones, when they rehashed that IP, right? They brought that back. First movie since what? In 15 years? Since The Last Crusade? Indiana Jones and the King of the Crystal Skull grossed nearly $800 million worldwide in 2008. Wasn't great, but it made a lot of money. It didn't prevent Harrison Ford's next 4 films from disappointing. Same thing for folks like Bruce Willis. Parlaying their franchise success into higher roles for their non-blockbuster work is gone. So franchises used to subsidize smaller non-franchise films and boosted an actors' all-around appeal. But however, these franchises are the lifeblood of Hollywood and only feed titles that fall within a given IP. The model is no longer about balancing franchise tentpoles with smaller bets. It's about chasing the next big series. Reviving star power is not as simple as delivering quality mid-budget films anymore. Hollywood has continued to do that in the 21st century, only been met with a shrug of indifference from audiences more often than not. Now, the other movie I got to watch is Nosferatu, but I'll have to wait till next week because I want to make time for that. And of course, after Christmas, I got to wait a couple of weeks until more movies come back in. So they bring a couple of actors into the mix now that are exciting young talents. Zendaya, Timothée Chalamet, Tom Holland, Florence Pugh, Austin Butler. I would put Glenn Powell on that list in the same vein. I probably would put Sydney Sweeney in that list as well. They're all, that's the next crop of new talent right now that's getting the bigger roles these days. For every major franchise success like Spider-Man No Way Home and Dune Part 2, there are smaller efforts that failed to make notable box office stints, like Beautiful Boy and The Bike Riders. Right, so Austin Butler, Timothée Chalamet, Zendaya, all in Dune Part 2, but to kind of stretch themselves out. Timothée Chalamet right now doing the Bob Dylan biopic. Zendaya doing Challengers earlier this year. I know there's other movies she's going to be a part of now. Tom Holland also trying to stretch himself out into other projects. Florence Pugh also in other projects. Glenn Powell going into doing Twisters and doing other things outside of the Maverick Top Gun series, right? When we talk about how Tom Cruise, I don't know much more he can do in terms of acting after he gets done with Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning, coming in the theaters in May. He's been synonymous with death-defying action, building his career with beloved filmmakers like Ridley Scott, Martin Scorsese, Steven Spielberg, Stanley Kubrick, and relatively grounded star-driven dramas. Leo DiCaprio uses his star power to make well-received, prestigious adult-skewing event movies. Star power is traditionally built through well-crafted films that showcase a range of talent, as opposed to generic $200 million blockbusters in personal social media. But right now, Hollywood faced monumental financial pressures on the backs of pandemic and production shutdowns, enduring some short-term pain by developing and investing more in affordable non-IP films with emerging talent, raising the long-term ceiling of the industry. A better balance between big franchises and more smaller, diverse films, and emphasis on talent development and strategic public availability can help foster the next generation of stars. All right. The theatrical industry, they say, it needs to invest in 3 to 4 years of star vehicles that allow well-liked young actors to play normal character types like a lawyer, doctor, or spurned bride, as opposed to a marquee franchise character. That's how you get people to show up for movies that are just movies, which helps give high concept and new to you films a chance to get out of this franchise rut. It's going to be tough this year because when you look at the movies that are making money this year and what really turned out well, it is tough, isn't it? So overall for the year 2024, Inside Out, Deadpool, Wolverine, it's all these big IP models, the movies that made a lot of money overall. And if we go down and look at some of the other movies that didn't have that big of a budget, it would take a while to go down the list to get to that point. Of some of the movies I saw this year that I thought really did come out and give something really different, which was interesting, was, okay, I'll give you Conclave, still very star-driven, but it wasn't a ridiculously big-budget film. I would put in there Monkey Man. Bike Riders I would put in there as well. The movie Cabrini, the Angel Studio stuff, that's actually not too bad. Some of their stuff that they have. The Substance, which I don't have to go and talk about anymore that I already have. But yeah, when I'm looking at what movies really did do well, that were on the lower end, that really got to me, it gets very tough to find. By the way, Megalopolis only made $7.6 million. Oh my goodness, that's wild. But it's true. Like, there's not a lot of movies that came out that really stood out to me that were, the mid-budget and like were really popular. Because right now, even in the Oscar-nominated movies that we have at the moment right now, if we're going to look at what movies are out there that might be considered the biggest things we're going to see for this year, the movies they had that came out this year, one of them I was looking for and I didn't ever see it was Honora. I never saw it come out. Like if it came out in theaters, I don't think I ever caught it. Blitz, never saw it. Challengers, I did see. Conclave, I did see. A Different Man, did not see. I don't think it was available in theater. I don't know if it was. Dune Part 2. Emilia Perez, never got to see that because it was Netflix, right? His 3 daughters, never got to watch it. Inside Out 2. Maria. The other thing is that also some of these movies had to be over on streaming as opposed to watching in theaters. And I still think it's something to be said about how often certain movies we're going to be able to catch as a chance that we will be able to watch, right? Baby Girl's also a part of that category. The Brutalist. Complete Unknown. Gladiator 2 I watched. Hard Truths. Never got to find this movie. Nickel Boys. Nosferatu I'm going to try to catch. Queer. Seed of the Sacred Fig. September 5th. Sing Sing. And Wicked. Among those names. But it's very hard to go and catch all those movies. And it would be a great time right now, at the end of the year, if some of these movies were able to be seen in theaters. So we could have that real effect. But we don't have that right now. And it's very unfortunate that we don't. And in the meantime, now we're stuck in the whole streaming scene right now where people are not sticking around for streaming subscriptions. Because things are starting to go and make their way down. No matter how much investment is being put into trying to get streaming to go and take off and subscription numbers, accounts to go up, it's not working. Here's a telling thing about streaming that tells you something's going wrong. Netflix will stop reporting subscriber numbers as of their first quarter 2025 report. The company says engagement time, operating profit, and revenue offer better gauges of performance, calling the subscription tally just one component of our growth. So they don't want to talk about the growth in terms of it going up and down. I understand why they're doing it because obviously they can't just keep showing they're going to keep going with a higher subscriber count. It's going to be impossible to keep that up. So to not report on that, I mean, I get it. I think for some people they're going to be a little bit delusional to think, well, it's always going to go up. They're always going to be able to get it to go up. Well, no, they're not. So now they're at a plateau. And I think they realize that's what's going on right now as we speak. And that move will open the door for rivals to follow suit. Apple and Amazon already have ample experience with burying their streaming results under layers of semi-related tech operations. But streaming remains the dynamic center of the fast-shifting entertainment landscape, according to Deadline.com. I'm reading this story. Given how bruising the business is compared with the heyday of pay TV, 2024 has been in many ways a voluntary correction following the great Netflix correction of 2023. Initially considered to be ad-free by nature, streaming is now dominated by advertising. Pricing at teaser levels set a few years ago has jumped up dramatically. Content spending, while still considerable, has come down as companies reckon with Wall Street's demand for profitability. Right. Content spending going down, advertising going up, because people couldn't afford to keep the premium accounts because they said, well, we're going to start putting ads on it. Doesn't matter. So looking at what they've had so far, Apple TV reports, if this is for per streaming, what has been, how these streaming services have performed so far. So they had the Presumed Innocent series on Apple TV Plus, which has become a bona fide drama franchise. Shows like Pachinko to Severance to Slow Horses all had some successful dramas and acclaim. The low light of the year for them was the movie Wolves with George Clooney and Brad Pitt. I actually like that movie. I'd still say, you want to go and catch it. You're not going to be disappointed by it. It's not, it's watchable. I don't think it was like blow away crazy, but like I think it still would have been doing well in the theater. But when Fly Me to the Moon and Napoleon didn't do well, and they were Apple TV exclusives along with Killers of the Flower Moon, yeah, they're not going to put them out there so much. They decided we're going to pull back on the movie exhibitions. I get it. I think Fly Me to the Moon, I don't think I had but one other person in the theater with me that night. For 2025, Apple TV has a long way since its bumpy launch, and they're fairly lean, offering now $10 a month on a standalone basis, up from $5 at launch. We now have the bundles we talked about earlier this year. But now, Apple TV is still holding out on offering an ad tier. But that's something they're going to have to really go ahead and come to grips with pretty soon. Disney. So they got stronger with the with the integration of Hulu and ESPN Plus content on Disney Plus for bundle subscribers. But right now, Disney Plus is a one-stop shop for everything that they have to offer. The low light they have right now is that Disney did turn a streaming profit for the first time in the year, but they're buoyed by sports via ESPN Plus, Disney Plus, and Hulu remain unprofitable on their own. And subscriber growth across both platforms have been a bit of a headache. For Disney, they can't seem to decide whether it's driven by public sentiment or on sensitive topics. So they canceled The Acolyte on Disney Plus for financial reasons, but also, after the first season, was the subject of racist cyberbullying online, prompting outcries from cast members who felt abandoned by the company, staying silent amid the vitriol. And so what will happen with the 2-year-old ad tier churning and subscriber for 2025, that's what Disney has to go and deal with for next year. For 2025 for Max, first of all, their highlight was that they're still HBO's content is still the shining star of Max. They still offered new seasons of The House of the Dragon, True Detective, Industry, and Hacks, and got new shows like The Penguin and Dune Prophecy that did really well. Now, 2024's low light for them is they lost the NBA, Warner Brothers Discovery, so TNT will not have those games. And without that sports tier that they don't normally have, they're going to hope that people are going to still spend $10 a month for the NHL, cycling, French Open tennis, and March Madness men's basketball. Netflix, they got their new 3-year NFL deal for the Christmas games. $140 million a game they're spending. That's wild. Also getting the rights to the WWE's Monday Night Raw, a $5 billion 10-year agreement. So stable viewers into the weekly lineup and a major engine for the company's still emerging advertising operation. 2024 low light where there were tech glitches that came about with their live streaming when it came to the Jake Paul-Mike Tyson fight. But the NFL Christmas Day doubleheader went without a hitch. So good to hear that part. That was going to be important. I wonder if we'll even get any viewership numbers for that at all. It'd be kind of interesting. So for Netflix, they are doing a crawl, walk, run outlook for their nascent ad business. We still don't know how many subscribers they really have for the $7 a month ad tier, but they did say in November they would now reach 70 million monthly active users, up from 40 million in May. The next thing for Netflix is, how much is it going to do for live sports? They're more along to live events, more drawn to live events like comedy specials, a program with a circus component. They're going to look at other opportunities, I guess, but they're not. You're still trying to figure out if they want to be bound down by anything else. For Paramount Plus, Taylor Sheridan has been doing everything for them. Again, Yellowstone, Tulsa King, Landman, all performing very well. He's been the place. Paramount still relies on theatrical releases and next day linear shows to stay relevant. Showtime now is still walled off to a premium tier. There's not much basic Paramount Plus standing out in the crowd of the streaming marketplace. So streaming consolidation is a big thing for them. But that's where Showtime and Paramount now together to see how they're going to work out with each other. Plus the Skydance merger with Paramount and see how that's going to work out. For Peacock, they did really well with their Olympic coverage. Viewership increased 39% in July to their largest share of TV usage ever. And they doubled their 35 to 49-year-old audience. But they're still having issues with their original content. Traders and Love Island USA do give some buzz for them. And so did Ted, but that's pretty much all they have to show for themselves. So Peacock has to step up more original content if they want to survive the streaming consolidation on the horizon. They have the Olympics and a few NFL streaming exclusives under their belt. How will they build on their sports and live event strength, especially in a non-Olympics and a non-election year? Prime Video, NFL's done very well. Viewership highs, better than predicted revenue for the initial months of advertising running on series and films. But they're also getting the new 11-year deal for the NBA and WNBA. That's going to help them out. The Fallout series did very well for them. Got a younger audience. That was a big thing for the challenge for them, that they're going to be able to build off of that. Those are the kind of things that the streaming services are worrying about right now and what they're going to do going forward. I think 2025, we're going to see a lot of cable companies, a lot of cable channels getting switched around with ownership. I don't know if it'll be good or bad or not. We'll have to figure out what's going to happen. Story coming from Cord Cutters News. Nickelodeon, BET, MTV, Comedy Central are no longer priorities for Paramount. As you know, they've all been switched off to their own side company. Hollywood Reporter makes a report that the Skydance regime and their merger is going to be coming up. There's going to be questions about the future of these channels and how they could be just sold off. So BET's had a number of offers from various people, and we know that MTV, we don't know about the other ones because there's also the part where the prioritization has been starting to come across really big because there's been a recent wiping of digital archives for networks like MTV News and Comedy Central. Erasing digital history suggests a lack of commitment to preserving the legacy of these channels, further fueling speculation about their futures. So now MTV is starting to bring themselves down. Did you realize this now, that Friends and Big Bang Theory are there now? They're putting those sitcoms now over on MTV. So establish syndicated content rather than investment in original programming, signaling the decline in the network's focus on creating new cutting edge content. So MTV is going to be a figment of its former self pretty soon. We're going to see the end of that altogether. The decline of MTV and Comedy Central raises broader questions about the future of cable television as a whole. So that's another thing we got to look at and see what happens. A couple of the radio things they're going to bring up before we wrap things up. Talkers Magazine, I don't talk about much about them, but they are called the Bible Talk Radio on the New Talk Media. They talk about talk radio and the issues for them. Meanwhile, talk programming is prominent in podcasting. There's some issues they talk about right here when it comes to talk radio. Still being stuck in the very contrived format on putting content out there. So they talk about the biggest and most challenging issues facing the industry. The economics. They say about talk radio is subjected to trials and tribulations of the large radio industry, not surrounded by a protective force field simply because it's important. Podcasting fractionalization, that the digital media ecosystem originally spawned and inspired by talk radio's lead, now competes with the medium within the interactive marketplace of ideas. Talk radio faces the challenge of expanding into a multi-platform environment such as podcasting, video streaming, while maintaining the special radio aesthetic. Talk radio audiences are getting older. And the other thing they're worried about is AM radios still staying on the dashboard, which Congress is still trying to go and work on that. I don't talk much about it, but I still see things being talked about on a regular basis. A couple of stories from radio that are not obvious, but I mean, just we're going to have it anyway, right? So, Cumulus Media now is receiving a delisting warning from the NASDAQ stock market. So much like where Odyssey was not too long ago, where they have to go and make sure that their price stays above $1 per share for 30 consecutive days. That right now, Cumulus is below $1 a share in their Class A common stock. And that Cumulus must get their share price back over $1 per share for 10 business days by June 16th of 2025, or it'll be removed and delisted from NASDAQ. There we go. Who expects that to go and come up? Stock closed, by the way, as of December 20th, as I'm reading this story, at 75 cents per share. Oof, not good. But that's been a common thing right now. Beasley Media had implemented a reverse stock split of the Class A common stock and Class B common stock, 1 for 20, to regain compliance with the $1 minimum bid threshold, so they can stay on NASDAQ themselves. Salem Media Group, same thing. And the company in 2023 in December said it would voluntarily cease trading on NASDAQ, and they started trading on the OTC markets. All of them are dealing with this. And the last thing from iHeartRadio, of course, iHeartMedia, they're going to be able to cut their total debt by $440 million as their loan maturities are going to be pushed back another 3 years. So they got that approved. They've completed a package of debt exchange transactions that have met the net impact of extending the vast majority of their debt maturities by 3 years. So yeah. Holders of $4.8 billion of debt participated in the exchange offers expiring on December 18th. Loans coming in due in 2026 won't mature until 2029. Debt maturing in 2027 will mature in 2030. And 2028 loans will get pushed back to 2031. Do you want to be a part of that interest? You want to be part of that radio business? I mean, look at all the things I keep talking about right now. And all these different industries when it comes to Hollywood, the struggle that we have financially and for content. Same thing for television. Same thing for radio. But yeah, podcasting and streaming and social media, oh, they're doing great. Streaming, not the major stuff, just like the other stuff. All right. Merry Christmas. Happy New Year if you don't hear from me before. But anyway, come back for another Broadcasters Podcast. Remember, the content is king, and the control of your content is in your hands.